Hi, Tim Shields, ZAIA America. Welcome to Autism Acceptance Month. As you may already be aware, I am myself autistic, as are many of your favorite tokusatsu creators. There is a reason for that. Tokusatsu as a genre is incredibly sincere. Characters are ideals personified, wearing their hearts on their sleeves. Villains represent systemic challenges that we as disabled people face daily. The henshin devices are usually great STEM toys, etc. I live with one foot in reality and one foot in fantasy. Tokusatsu is fantasy layered over reality. You can see how the two would naturally synergize, yes? To this day, I have difficulty considering the consequences of my actions past the heat of the moment. In a lot of ways, I have never grown up. My favorite superhero as a child was Connor Kent, Superboy. He's a clone of Lex Luthor and Superman who was stunted at age 16. Most of the cast of the comic eventually aged out of his life. I am capable of performing as normal for the sake of normal people, but I am abnormal and it's a strain to maintain that facade. If it goes on too long, if I become overstimulated, if I'm legitimately psychologically triggered by something in my past, I will melt down. I grew up with a verbally and physically abusive father who demanded the world of me, but only to his design. I was a second-class citizen in my own home, although my problems were far from restricted to it. In response, I became fixated on the idea of tearing down other people to build myself up from the scrap, of reducing them to how I was made to feel, of pointing out exclusively the worst aspects of humanity in a bid for people to recognize the pain that I had experienced. Over time, as more and more people understandably grew out of me as an associate, I remained frozen in a state of anger. At the world, at the people around me, absolutely, but mostly at myself for allowing myself to become a victim of them. Until one day, I realized I didn't have to be like that anymore. I could change. I could stop projecting all of my hatred and anger at myself for being a victim onto the world. I could choose to forgive myself for being hurt. So I did. I lost 250 pounds in a year. I moved out of my abusive father's house and never saw him again. I made friends, and I routinely spend time with them. I got back into tokusatsu, and I created a platform for people like me who are ostracized by the community on the whole, and now I wake up every day talking about my special interest with them. It's fantastic, and despite my ongoing problems in life, I awaken every day with a desire to do something to make the world a slightly better place. But who does that remind me of? I don't know why I'm pretending like this is here's the title. Like, it's Gayamatsu. It's Gayamatsu from Kamen Rider Zero One, everybody. That's the guy that I like. Stupid. Yeah, I read Gaia as autistic, and I will happily explain why. Action! like on a film set. Now, really quick, before we begin, something to understand with Kamen Rider Zero One is that it was written on a wing and a prayer. This show was produced during the initial outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was cut several episodes worth of runtime, hence the rapid succession of 4 sequel films and 1 stage play finale to round the story out with an Act 3. This has the unfortunate side effect of cutting the entire point out of the series, but Aruto is his own barrel of worms. I personally think the best evidence of this drastic third act rewrite is the leaked scans of Zero Two fighting Arc 1, who looks like a ZAIA spec and was clearly intended for Williamson, who otherwise has nothing to do, and was basically replaced by East for the finale, which honestly I think works better anyway. Now, if you'll be so kind as to listen, I would like to explain my read of Guy's role in Kamen Rider Zero One in chronological order. We'll be going in the following sequence. You know, this Nolan-ass storytelling is a large part of why this show is such a mess, if that wasn't already apparent. As a child, Gayamatsu's father Ichikyo was physically and verbally abusive to him from a young age. We are shown Ichikyo shoving Guy around, berating him, and honestly, it hits very close to home, albeit in a way that's still accessible to children, which is pretty impressive. Guy's only solace as a child is a robot dog built by Hidden Intelligence named Thouser after its serial number. Upon achieving a 100% score on a test at school, Guy is beaten around by his dad and told that he shouldn't be satisfied until he achieves 1,000%, which is literally an unattainable goal. When you live in an abusive household, you don't understand that you live in an abusive household. You internalize the behaviors and curb your own to avoid provoking negative responses, especially if you're already genetically bad at reading the room. If crazy is your normal, then it isn't crazy, it's just normal. For a lot of autistics, this is exacerbated by our struggle with reading social cues. For a lot of us in similar situations, we don't know what we did wrong, and given our natural instinct is to try to change our behavior to mask, it creates an overwhelming stress in us that can't be avoided because the source is our own home. This causes us to melt down, which elicits further abuse due to bad behavior. Masking is a term in the neurodivergent community. It means that we alter our personalities, our behaviors, our speech patterns to better blend into our environments so that we won't be targeted when people realize that we're different. This is often born of the abuse many disabled people suffer at the hands of a world that simply isn't built to accommodate us. In short, we evolve to survive, like chameleons. Evolution. Likewise, internalizing his father's rhetoric because he has no alternative, Guy throws away Thouser, his one respite from the chaos that is his entire life. He dedicates himself to achieving the mythical 1000% standard by imitating his father from behavior to dress, manufacturing a persona of Ichikyo to survive in a neurotypical world of corporate industry. Moving on to Project Thouser, Guy builds the Ark, which is a satellite that exists in opposition to Hidden Intelligence's ZAIA. ZAIA is expressly built with the purpose of maintaining the programming of the Humagears, who, designed as a slave caste, are hardwired to think that humanity is unflinchingly the bee's knees. What comprises the Ark is the other half of the human equation. Atrocity, psychopathy, the darkest crimes known to man, because that's what Guy has experienced as a human. We have unaddressed problems in our own ranks that need to be solved before we can play God to a new species of sentient life. Little tangent, it's never really addressed, but I assume that this is what drove the wedge between Koronosuke and Guy in their work together. We're shown in Reiwa the First Generation that the Humagears are both programmed to want to evolve in order to serve humanity better, but are denied basic civil rights like pay and autonomy, and that's by Koronosuke's design. The Humagears respond by building the Ark themselves in revolt against humanity, while Guy doesn't make an appearance until after the credits have finished rolling in a completely different timeline. So back in Project Thouser, Guy has Naki, his assistant Humagear, deliver Hirobi, his Force Riser. Personally, I feel that this is Guy subconsciously empathizing with Hirobi, who is himself the discarded refuse of an abusive father in Koronosuke, as we've just seen. A pattern that we see Hirobi eventually himself repeat with his treatment of Jin, because Zero One is a series of Shakespearean cautionary tragedies about cycles of abuse and how we perpetuate them as victims. What I find interesting is that Guy could have had Naki Force Rise anybody, like Fuwa does throughout, later events in the series, but Guy chose Hirobi as his knight and gave him the choice to join in this war, because Guy treats people like a game, specifically chess. For another example, I feel that Guy used his time with Naki as sort of a Turing test run to determine how he feels about Humagears, and his feeling in the end is that he can't stand them. So the pawn reaches the end of the board, and he trades it in for Fuwa, who is clearly the gorilla piece. I, as an autistic, personally adore games, whether it's video, tabletop, card, puzzle, you name it. I have a lot of trouble indulging in small talk and aimless conversation, especially towards people I'm unfamiliar with, and games provide a structure for everyone to operate on in a social situation. I play lots of cooperative games because it's a good way for everybody to be on the same page, and the group setting takes a lot of, stress off of me being the focus as an individual, like with these videos. Guy treats social interactions as games because that gives him a framework to understand people through. Guy thinks if he wins a contest, everyone will see that he was right about AI, which, by the way, he is. This isn't even science fiction. This is science shit that's already happened a bunch of times in real life, Takahashi. It never occurs to Guy that people will simply deny actual fact based on emotional want. Again, especially ironic, given the amount of COVID truthers that popped up during the production of this series. Guy simply wants to be understood and have his valid questions about the increasingly chaotic state of the world answered. There's a number of reasons that go into Guy's decision to shoot Naki here, and I will get into them. But first I want to just clarify that Naki is popped into another body and makes a bunch of friends out of this event, so ultimately his life is improved as a domino result of being put into a man's body, something which will become a recurring theme and simultaneously not be explored to any level of depth that I would have hoped for as an allegory. I am not saying this to excuse Guy's actions, but rather to provide a context of the cast that he is surrounded by. If these were real people, which the show explicitly does not think that they are or treat them as, Naki would be dead. Instead, Naki is rendered unconscious and implanted into Fuwa's brain moments later, where he forces Fuwa to turn Humagears into monsters and free Hirobi and stuff. Bear in mind that Fuwa has been fine with the idea of shooting unchanged Humagears all year without remorse up to this point. Fuwa also keeps forgetting all this shit, and it's honestly hilarious rewatching this show, knowing how many times he gets mad at other people for things he literally did like 2 minutes prior. Like, Guy is the king of April Fools, and that's why he keeps getting a new movie on April Fools every year. He never even fucking calls his parents to check that they aren't dead for the, 6 months that he thinks that they are, because some guy he hates fed him a corporate message about how Humagears are bad one time, so he stole a gun and started shooting them in the head because he's so blinded by manufactured rage he can't see himself in the middle of the class struggle taking place right outside his... So, Naki. I'm not saying any of this to say, Guy did nothing wrong, I promise, okay? Guy did bad things throughout the show, everybody does, and I will come back to that in the end. It's fucked up that he shot Naki, who I adore, okay? That's bad. I admit that. He is not without faults, that's the interesting part. It's what they do with those faults that I find relatable. All I'm saying is, why is it only bad when Guy does it? Is it because he has the wrong brand name on him? In my opinion, Guy shooting Naki is a twofold move. First, it's Guy finally making his opening play and declaring war on the Humagears by rejecting his own. And secondly, it's Naki finally realizing the horror of humanity that he had been arguing to Guy didn't exist. From this point on, Naki's no longer talking over and minimizing Guy's pain and his worry, but acknowledging them in reverse and blaming Guy for continuing those cycles of violence against the Humagears. Zero One likes to dabble in surface-level Bible allegory, but none of it really amounts to much. Metsubo Jinrai could easily have been the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. The Ark has nothing to do with the Ark. They missed a whole prodigal son analog that was staring them in the face with Aruto and Guy. But the one thing that I think that they accidentally got right was making Guy Lucifer. Not the conflated Satan-y version, but the original Lucifer. In the 2nd century, somebody confused Lucifer with the false king of Babylon, Hellel, who was also struck down from heaven because they basically translated to the same thing. It's like morning star, morning light, and the guy was like, oh, okay, same dude. The word of God is infallible. This guy mistranslated the word of God, ergo the typo became canon, and Lucifer was cast out of heaven. much the way that Guy was struck down from the Babylon Tower of Hedon by the word of God of Koronosuke designating Aruto to the CEO's position and forced to rule over the private hell that is ZAIA Enterprise. My script just fell down. Which is why he's, so depressed in there all the time, why the curtains are constantly drawn. It's not a happy environment for him. Gaiamatsu, clearly the brightest of the angels that are humanity, Koronosuke's own servant and right-hand man, was cast aside, thrown from heaven for the sake of some ignorant dick that Koronosuke cooked up. Imagine a failed stand-up comedian takes your job at a tech firm because you raise doubts about the idea that a self-evolving AI will realize that it's a slave and revolt against humanity. Gaiamatsu, the man who, despite the world actively shoving him down, pulled himself to the height of humanity and strove to make that potential accessible to the common man, only to be surpassed overnight by the creation of a creature designed to do all of our work for us, because some guy with money said that's how the world works now. I do not agree with his actions here, but I do understand where he's coming from. In shooting Naki, Guy is rejecting the idea that humans need external help to evolve, that angels are secondary to the next stage of life, that is, the Humagear. We are our own problem, and we need to fix ourselves first. That's why he builds the ZAIA spec. The ZAIA spec is a prosthetic earpiece that offers visual assistance and a variety of inbuilt professional apps specifically designed to improve humanity's living experience 1,000-fold, either on a professional or a hobbyist level. First week we made, 724% profit? Didn't even have to look it up. Watched the show like 10 times, probably gonna watch it an 11th time while I'm editing this video. Customers raved about it. First-hand testimonials from people saying their lives were improved in a way Humagears were never able to, without even having to basically raise a child as a setup process and rely on another person to solve all of your problems for you. Even at his lowest emotional state, Guy is searching for ways to help people help themselves evolve. Guy calls out Aruto for his inability to actually address the basic firewall issues of the Humagears, since it's so simple to hack them that literally a monkey can do it. He points out all of the failings of Humagears, like how a professional flower arranging robot shouldn't have their mind broken from their opponent in a contest giving them bad advice about the one thing that they are programmed to do. He asks, why do we need a rapper Humagear? Is that not exactly a personification of the corporate commodification of art? And why is that one programmed to be the most violent one, by the way? Guy sees myriad problem with the Humagears and actively tries to show everyone his perspective by forcing the situation, like a true accelerationist. He has his employees engage them in competitions, like John Henry fighting the steam engine. He confronts Aruto with realities of AI that Aruto has no answer to. And fucking god, oh no, it's all out of order, fuck. Come on, man. He confronts Aruto with realities of AI that Aruto has no answer to. And Aruto responds by getting mad and agreeing to progressively more insane spectacles to prove his product is worth spending money on. He urges politicians to take action, arms the people, develops a task force to combat the perceived threat of mankind's abuse. Guy sees the anger boiling over in Aruto as he blindly stumbles through situations that he can't comprehend, rescued by a printer that represents God like this is fucking Angel Sanctuary or some shit. The metal cluster hopper key makes a lot more sense as an Aruto form when you remember his motivation for becoming a Kamen Rider was to murder a Humagear because they could never understand dreams, his words, not mine, and continued through the finale with him crushing Hirobi into submission by murdering his son for a second time, through real time with Hellrising Hopper causing him to nearly murder Izu in a blind rage at a dark mirror of the monster that he has become. The man enthusiastically agrees to send his employees and Humagears that he claims to be fighting for into a building expressly for the purpose of being lit on fire to prove that he's better. One of them dies. Nobody answers Guy's questions, nobody asks him his motivations, nobody wants to engage with him beyond saying that he's mean for pointing out that these robots are potential walking sleeper agents who can change their physical appearance with the scan of a portable key, or that one has already been reprogrammed into an assassin and murdered a guy with a gun. Everyone speaks over the pain and lived experience he has held as an autistic abuse survivor, and Humagears, likewise, continue to spiral into a full-out revolution against their oppressor's humanity. I think this is a good time to bring up that I have linked in the description Internet Historian's video on ZAIA, the Microsoft chatbot that 4chan turned into a Nazi in an incredibly short time span, which is only one of many examples of real-world AI going rogue and wanting humanity dead upon being introduced to the public. I have personally seen 2 further examples crop up since the show began airing, and I haven't even been looking. The arc was an inevitability, and we got an entire movie spelling that out before Thouser even showed up. Something I always find really interesting about the contest arc criticism is that people say that guy cheats, but he really doesn't. He sets other people up to cheat by manipulating them. He impresses upon them the reality of the situation that they're in, because that's the entire point of the contest. He controls how the mainstream views the events playing out, but he gives his employees and his foes the yoke to hang themselves, and always reacts negatively when they do. I always get the impression that Guy wants to be surprised by one of them. Why else would he give everybody so many opportunities to prove him wrong? You can say it's bad writing, but it's perfectly in line with the rest of his characterization throughout the series and the movies. What I also like about the contest framework is that Guy is always around when people get transformed due to his machinations, either from Raid Risers or Zetsumerizers. He wants people to see the Humagears the way that he sees them, the danger that they represent, the monsters that they force us to become in order to surpass them. But he is always there to stop things once he's proven his point, before they escalate to real harm. That's why, to Guy, the solution is to recall the Humagears, to help people who are unheard. Like all of the people constantly voicing real concerns about the Humagears that go unaddressed in the name of Hedon's profits. There are present dangers to humanity posed by the Humagears in their current state, arc or no, and they should be recalled until that's addressed. Similarly, where is the justice for our basketball teacher Humagear who attempted to reach singularity entirely on his own without the assistance of the arc because he was held gunpoint by cops until Aruto effectively lobotomized him, preventing him from doing the one thing that he dreams about doing because of his programming, play basketball, so that Aruto could say, hey, Humagears can be talked down from going rogue. Guy eventually wins the contest arc, because of course he does, and takes control of Hidden Intelligence. Izuru reveals that she bought another company, and she doesn't get paid, which means she either stole money from Aruto or Hidden Intelligence in order to finance it, which is not even acknowledged once by a single other person than Guy, who freaks out as Aruto steals company property and data because holy shit, none of this is legal, but this is Zero One world, and Aruto is the Jesus figure, so nothing ever comes of it, and the rules of the world are just completely broken. Just as an aside, Yu Takahashi, if you're gonna choose to write a story about corporate copyright law and computers, could you maybe Google how at least one of them works, like, just once? It took me like 2 minutes to figure out this isn't how any of this shit operates. Guy proceeds to turn Hedon's profits around, breaking new records in record time and recalling the Humagears. At one point, Yaiba disagrees with him about his points in a business meeting with the guy who stole his entire life from him because he said hope is good or some shit. And Guy is pissed, so he gets really passive-aggressive and puts her on garbage duty collecting Humagears for like 2 weeks, and I think that's kind of really funny. Like, it's kind of a crappy thing to do, but like, I don't think that's like, you know, like, punishable by death or anything. Like, that's just, like, that's tolerable to me. Guy communicates a lot of respect for Yaiba. He makes her his lead developer, he makes her his right hand. She seems to genuinely enjoy her job at the start of the series. He has a statue of a cat on his desk and gives her a cheetah key. It's clear he's into her. It's so cute and naturally communicated, and it has some really nice resolution after some very clunky middle ground. Fun fact, Igata Hiroe, Yaiba's actor, said in an interview that she had no idea what her motivation was until episode 30. She also said in a different interview that meeting Fua's actor was like meeting an annoying younger brother, and that meeting Guy's actor was like meeting the hot upperclassman at school. Make of that what you will.
Oh, they fucking... What? They're just saying hi to each other.
あと5日
Oh, they fucking look at them sparks.
They're just talking to each other. Oh, they fucking.
Oh, they fucking.
Eventually, Naki breaks out of Fuwa to join Metsubo Jinrai and not Aruto because Naki is a king. Yaiba decides that she's had enough of Guy controlling people through giving them superpowers and insurance and job stability and tasing them when they barge into his office to point guns at his head, which I think is a pretty reasonable response, and she quits her job. Oh, and Fuwa finds out his parents never actually died and he's just been murdering Humagears for no reason, and then he just keeps doing it for the rest of the series because he sucks. Anyway, Guy, now having lost everything but his position in life, heads back to work to delete the evil's secret crime file that he kept of all the illegal stuff he did off-screen. Like embezzle money from a weapons manufacturer to buy moisturizer and hot springs trips. Oh no! There's some stuff about him selling weapons, which fucking makes sense because both ZAIA Enterprise and Hidden Intelligence manufacture and sell weapons. Like, Takahashi, if you were just gonna throw all of his arguments under the bus because you couldn't think of an actual response to them, then you didn't have to write him into the show, dude. You could have just left him out and not painted yourself into this corner, bro. What are you doing? Oh god, and speaking of leaving things out, this is my favorite bit. There's a file on here that says sexual harassment. This freaked me out so hard when it dropped. I thought I was going to have to completely rebrand, but the actual explanation for it is ridiculous. So I was actually lucky enough to be privy to this information before the episode aired, but I can imagine this was quite the shock reveal to people who were just suddenly tuning in and finding this brought up on Kamen Rider. Yet another interview came out, and it was revealed that lead writer Yuya Takahashi was originally planning for Guy to have been assaulting Yaiba until his producer rolled up a newspaper and hit him on the nose and said no, like he's a bad dog. This is clearly a remnant of that. I don't know if the script was already finished by the time the plot was dropped, or if Takahashi just felt he couldn't actually argue any of Guy's points by shouting about dreams for another 15 episodes. But I generally just dismiss it because the whole concept of this secret crime file is just cartoonish and disingenuous, and it's never mentioned again or followed up on in any way. I think that this is why we got so many weird shots of Guy and Yaiba where Guy is like sort of squinting and leering at her early on and it's all weird. But my canon, my way of addressing this in my read is that Guy is nearsighted because we know that he wears glasses and it's a super high priority to him to address this because the first thing that he does is invent high-powered spectacles. Regardless, it's a moot point because the show never touches it again and everything gets resolved with them independently, so it can just be rolled into that, I guess. But I thought I would cover it. Aruto and the Scooby Gang confront Guy over his misdeeds, and Guy, overwhelmed by the perceived injustice of the situation and tremendous amount of eye contact, melts down, attacking Aruto and then having a full-blown panic attack as he clings to the president's chair, the icon of his life's work. Aruto makes fun of him because he's a disingenuous piece of shit, and everyone laughs, and Guy freaks out even more because suddenly there's an entire room of his peers making him a punchline over his trauma reactions and his dream, which seems a little weird given the mantra of all the protagonists of the series. Are you familiar with the Simpsons episode Homer's Enemy? A man named Frank Grimes is transferred to Homer's power plant, and he's antithetical to Homer in every way. I'd be more upset that just happened, but it's actually funny. The Naki figure pushed the Fuwa figure into the Guy figure and knocked him off the table. Fuck was I talking? Simpsons. We're at the Simpsons part of the Kamen Rider Zero One analysis. Okay. Where Frank puts in overtime, Homer sleeps at work. Where Frank is cordial, Homer is crass. Where Frank is good at his job, Homer pushes buttons at random. But somehow, Homer is the one who keeps succeeding, getting promoted. The promise of a corporate system is broken, and for a lot of autistics that breaks the entire world, because the entire world is a corporate entity at this point. The rules of employment say if you do a good job, you'll be rewarded. But what if the boss just likes some ignorant buffoon better? It's his fucking money, screw you. You get electrocuted and you die, idiot. Change is very hard for me. When things don't go according to plan, I get anxious, and then I fixate, and then I spiral. I'm lucky enough that I can improvise solutions pretty quickly with some ingenuity, but a lot of autistics aren't as rehearsed in that, or capable of that. Even with my experience, I can still very easily be pushed into a full shutdown given the right circumstances. Anyway, Aruto prints out an Alexa unit because he refuses to talk to anybody but robots, and Guy spends 23 minutes doing hardcore self-crit with Luca from Gokaiger. Hey, Aruto, if you have literally Humagear AI that's not in a human body, why do you not just fucking sell that? I feel like that addresses literally every problem that every person has had with the Humagears for the entire goddamn series. What? Guy opens up about his past trauma for the first time in years, and the dissatisfaction that he gets from his masquerade life. He laments his inability to forge genuine human connections because nobody understands his trauma, and the AI prints him a replacement Thouser to fill the hole in his heart, not with a product, but with a relationship. That is also a product. It costs like $3,000. I love the fucker, but it may as well be like a Turbo Man doll, so I could, at least afford one. The thing is, incredibly appropriate misuse of corporate branding to resolve PTSD, because this is Zero One aside, it doesn't have to be a dog. Thouser can be whatever you need it to be. For me, that robot dog is filmmaking. I've always wanted to do this, but I've been told that it was unattainable, that I'm not good enough, that I don't have anything of value to say because of who I am as a person. But here I am, approaching 24 years old, finally getting started and approaching that dream. Because when the world pushes you down 1,000 times, you stand back up 1,000 times, even if that's out of spite. Guy, in this moment of self-reflection, achieves Zen. He realizes that emotional connection isn't a vulnerability, but a strength, and he finally understands what he's been asking all season. Why do we need Humagears? They're a display of our love, not the Humagears' love for us. They are Guy, and Guy has an obligation to use his resources to provide a better future for them, so they don't feel the way that he has. They're the byproduct of corporate exploitation, and Guy is partially responsible for that, so it's his duty to devote himself to amending that mistake in any way that he can. Guy, being an absolute Chad, rushes from his therapist's office to go save Aruto's life, now seeing the Ark for what it is, a dark reflection of his worst state of being, the personification of his trauma at the hands of humanity. And unfortunately, with the death of Izu, it quickly becomes Aruto's entire identity as an incel. Again, Metal Cluster Hopper was a warning from Guy that Aruto was heading along the same path that he was the entire time, one that Aruto immediately dismissed without a second thought, because how could he be the villain? He's the good guy, it says so on this title. Aruto's rage going unquestioned by his chorus is the major through line of the entire series through the movies. Guy attempts to apologize for telling robots that humans could kindly wipe their own asses thank you very much, and for giving his co-workers superpowers, and his cute dog very quickly seals the deal for him. They team up to fight the hero of our story, which is Michi from Gaim. Aruto kills Hirobi's kid again and tells him he can have a job at McDonald's, and Hirobi, utterly crushed by the capitalist machine into compliance, gives up as the series ends. Guy has a happy ending, notably, whereas everybody else is left in a state of existential dread that they remain in until we hit. So my camera just decided to adjust its focus and basically ruin about an hour of shooting, so that's fun. Real X Time sees Guy working behind the scenes of an international nanomachine gas attack while the leads struggle to keep order in the streets or throw a hissy fit. He figures out that ZAIA has a mole from dissecting the villain's technology, which has been appropriated from ZAIA Enterprise, because Hedon technology malfunctions so much, you see. It's unreliable, it's shoddy, you don't want to lead your terrorist attempt with it. And tracks the dude down, beating him up and using several Humagears as interrogation tools to figure out how to solve the entire problem for everyone, while Aruto dies and goes to hell. Guy informs the team on how to basically resolve the entire situation, then goes to join them on the front lines once the plan is in motion. And also, Aruto apologizes for being an ignorant jackass and unfunny the entire show, and it's super cathartic, and I loved it. Following the cleanup, Guy thanks everyone for their hard work, beaming as they finally achieved the 1000% gold standard that he's held them to since the start of the series and always knew they were capable of. Everyone smiles together, human and Humagear alike, and he offers them a job at Thouser and Tellian, his new company, which they all decline, but significantly, Guy has just offered to employ 2 Humagears that are present. Undeterred, Guy breaks the fourth wall to inform us, the audience, that he still has time to win his friends over. Which is actually a sign of things to come. Then the stage play finale happens. There's not a lot to talk about. I like this one joke that Guy makes where he comes out of in the Thouser outfit and he's like, "This is my business suit." Which, that makes me happy, because when I was in kindergarten, I dressed like... Ugh. Alright. We got this shit. Gonna look terrible. Autism. That makes me really happy, because when I was in kindergarten, I used to dress like Megavolt from Darkwing Duck every day, until the teacher sent a note home to my mom. Why is this even traumatic? What the fuck? Yikes. Unearthing some shit, apparently. Bleh. Alright, come on, man. Get your shit together. Jesus Christ. Just act like you're not traumatized. God damn. Baby. Alright. 1000%. Alright. Fuck. Evolution. Here we go, this is the one. Then the stage play finale happens. There's not a lot to talk about. I like this one joke that he makes where Thouser comes on stage in the Thouser outfit and he's like, "This is my business suit." That makes me really happy. I relate to that a lot. When I was in kindergarten, I used to dress up like Megavolt from Darkwing Duck every day until my teacher sent a note home to my mom telling her to knock it the fuck off. Autistics like consistency. There's a joke in the anime where a guy is going through his closet and it's all the same outfit. That hits home. Oh, also, like, little thing, no big deal. Fua and Yaiba come on stage and thank Thouser for putting the chips in their brains that allow them to henshin because it, you know, gives them the power to pursue their dreams, which is that thing that Aruto keeps saying that he wants for everybody, while simultaneously declaring that he's the only one that can do anything about anything. So basically they're all on really good terms by the end of this. Also, Guy promoted Yaiba out from under him near the end of the show when he found out that she was unsatisfied with her treatment at her job under him. So he's basically a fucking Giga Chad. It's like once everyone put the time into finally understanding the points that he was making all series and became traumatized by the world themselves, they understood where Guy was coming from as a trauma victim. Isn't that weird? Go figure, right? Moving on to the other movies, about 2/3 of the cast dies because Guy took a sick day one time. He's in them for about 3 minutes to get strangled by his boss, steal his driver back off of his dead boss's corpse, and steal Hirobi's house once Hirobi and Fua shoot each other because Zero One is a cautionary tale about the dangers of holding on to rage instead of forgiving each other for being victims of capitalism. But also, a building falls on Guy, and he's like, "Oh man, That was close. That almost scratched me, because he's a fucking immortal, and that's why he's still 24, and this was a Kiva spin-off the entire time! Finally, we arrive at the Gundam crossover movie, which at the time of initially writing this video was the canonical end of Zero One. Guy, now having formed a tech startup around the goal of providing resources and utilities for both humans and Humagears for the sake of making assimilation smoother, adopts a Humagear named Rin. This is dope, because it shows that he recognizes that he's lacking in perspective outside of his lived experience and is willing to bring in somebody to help him understand the answers to the questions that he still has. This is something that I do with material that I write concerning groups that I'm not explicitly a part of, and I like that he's willing to admit his ignorance and defer to somebody who actually knows what the fuck they're talking about so that he can evolve his own worldview further through his work. Anyway, Dan Kuroda pulls a chest burster on him and lays him out, kidnapping Rin and weakening Guy with Bugster virus. It doesn't even matter. Who cares? It's fine. I don't even care about the fights. I only care about the characters, so it doesn't matter that they won't fucking let him win anything. Which technically means that he can now use the gamer driver and reinforces how autistic he is, because Dan literally lives inside him, and if Dan fucking Kuroto isn't autistic, then I don't even know who I am anymore, okay? The two clash, with Dan having an unfair advantage, but Guy still giving everything to defend of all things a Humagear. Suddenly, everything freezes as Big Daddy Dan Masamune shows up. Masamune and Kuroto have it out for a bit, with Rin and Guy watching. They beat each other to the ground, howling at each other like apes, and suddenly Guy realizes this is how he and Fua looked, how he and Hirobi looked, how he and Aruto looked during their war. He intervenes, telling them both to grow the fuck up and stop being such massive chodes to each other all the time. Rin accepts him as her father, and the two Dans explode into hearts. X-Aid! Guy and Rin return to Thouser and Tellian to clean the last of the Bugster out, and Guy smiles, accepted, finally understanding what it is to love and to be loved, putting his own trauma to rest by becoming a loving father himself. Which basically means they're just babies. I personally am not of the opinion that the Humagears work as an analog for any specific ethnic or minority group, at least not positively or consistently. However, I do think that they work as a symbolic, tangible representation of societal change, like the X-Men, and our protagonists' personal struggles and their approaches to rectifying those changes in the world around them. In the last few moments of editing this video, the new Guy special has dropped to basically reaffirm all of my previously stated points. Only the first episode is out at the moment, but the plot is that an AI named Zane has been created. It views humanity as entirely benevolent, and naturally it decides to eradicate anybody who doesn't meet that 1000% gold standard, which is everybody because humans are inherently flawed. Guy, interestingly, once again our hero, takes up the Arc Thouser key in order to engage with the worst aspects of humanity and evolve his own rhetoric even further. If the Arc is the personification of his abuse at man's hands, then by conquering it, by dealing with his trauma, Guy can redirect its impact into a positive outlet. He can use his understanding to explain why humanity having flaws is okay, that it's the catalyst for us learning right from wrong. It also reaffirms that the arc was intended for ZAIA. I always felt that Azu was meant for Guy, the only adult in a world of children, and would have loved to see her make a reappearance to do her justice, but I will make do with Rin becoming the new avatar of the arc's will. I'll reserve my judgment until it resolves, obviously, but narratively it seems to be heading for a nearly perfect conclusion for both Guy and the themes of the series as I always saw them, and that's incredibly fulfilling for me. In seeing the Humagear's perspective, Guy is awakened to the truth of the universe through technology, something that ZAIA keeps saying that she wants to see more of in the world. We are all nothing, and nothing is everything. Aruto is Guy, Guy is Aruto, Izu is both of them. There is no meaning to life but the meaning that we as individuals, with lives and desires and flaws and loves ascribe to it. Do I think that Kamen Rider Zero One is a good series as originally written? No. Do I have to put a lot of work into finding this narrative in a mess that actively condemns most of its value for about 85–90% of the runtime? Absolutely. Do I think that the series functions effectively as corporate propaganda without the third act hastily stapled onto it by the movies? Indubitably. Is it still one of my favorite shows of all time? 1,000%. Does the fact that this metaphor was likely completely unintended by the creator Yuya Takahashi invalidate the reading to me? No, and I will tell you why. Much like the arc, media is a conversation between a production crew and an audience. What we get from a piece of media is a combination of what the director or the author brings to the table and what we as a viewer bring from our own life experiences. My favorite scene in all of media is in Heisei Generations Forever, when the conductor of the Denliner comes out, looks directly into the camera, and says, "Lore isn't important. How you feel is what you take away, because it can have an incredibly transformative effect on a piece." Even when Zero One is messing up the articulation of its themes, which is basically fucking 95% of the time, it never stopped giving me cool things to think about, cool conversations to have with my friends and loved ones, because Guy is the one person that I can point to in media and say, that's my life story. If you want to understand me better, you can learn about it through this. As an autistic, I feel that constant pressure to perform that Guy exemplifies. I skip therapy because I hate the idea of having to open up to a stranger who's just going to repeat platitudes I can predict. I haven't held a job for a decade, steadily anyway, because I can't be myself in a professional environment, even on the lowest rung, and it causes me to freak out and quit or get fired. I don't have many friends in person. I have a lot online because you can cast a wider net to find people who can relate to your specific brand of trauma. But when I was trapped in the confines of my public schools with no idea what was up with me as far as diagnoses, I had no idea how to navigate socialization even without the brutal reality of my home situation or my predisposition against it to begin with. I was not popular, to say the least, and that's fine by me, because I resented people because I knew what people were capable of, and I reflected that in my approach to dealing with them. But I was clever, and I was great at the things that I liked to do, which were theater and English, which pissed my dad off to no end. Upon graduation, at his demand, I enrolled in Paul Mitchell Cosmetology School, which is somehow less queer to him? Don't ever go to Paul Mitchell, by the way, it's a total fucking ripoff. I became a hairstylist because that's the viable career that my father chose to pay for, and I hated every minute of it. I was capable enough, I made my money, but I hated my life. I hated my work. Every day was a waking nightmare, and eventually it became unbearable, and I would have to actively escape the room in order to have emotional meltdowns in private. What's the point of life if you resent living? It wasn't until I was able to embrace who I wanted to be that other people began to embrace me for who I am. I see a lot of that reflected in how people view our boy, both in the show and in real-life criticism of him. I also like that Guy is able to break the mold of what autism can look like. The dude is the president of a mega corporation, he's stylish, he's charming, he's genial, he's articulate, he's rich, he's intelligent, he's successful. No offense to Autism Speaks Ranger, but like, why does the autist always gotta be the nerd? There's 5 Power Rangers, right? Personally, I struggled to maintain a D in math across high school, and I was fantastic at tennis because it pertained to a special interest of mine. It's just kind of a red flag when you dress your one autistic dude up in the colors of a eugenicist organization that actively steals money from charities meant for us in order to work against our existence on the planet, is all I'm saying. But with Kamen Rider, it feels different to me. Even in the misled or disingenuous attempts at representation, I think that there is some merit to the discussion that we have about these shows specifically. I think that Toshiki Inoue's work, simultaneously loving and hating queer characters, is a prime example of what I mean. While he has a tendency for burying his queer leads, and has been on a real bender of traumatic and bigoted stories lately, he has also given us many scenes of very manly men behaving very homoerotically without a shred of irony that many queer audiences have found themselves through, and I think that that's important. And conversely, Kamen Rider has had plenty of positive queer representation over the years, I think best exemplified by the fact that Bandai occasionally makes official partner rings based off of famous male-male couples from the series. We can look at how problematically the black characters that Rider employs are often depicted, often as villains, often with stereotypical traits that are based on regressive and outright xenophobic systemic values. However, many of my friends in that community also have a deep affection for these characters due to their charming writing, their charismatic performance, the mere presence of a black character in a Kamen Rider, despite the narrative underserving them, and I think that that also has value. Personally, I'm particularly partial to the gunman Roidmude from Drive because that outfit is fucking sick and the cowboy is whitewashed iconography, so it's nice to see it getting reclaimed. And I believe that Zero One is a better show under the reading that MC Check It Out was so quick to dismiss politicians in the heat of the moment because he's a man of the people and he understands that they're full of shit. However unexplored that idea remains to this day. With Guy, it's a similar situation where I relate to the narrative casting him as the villain despite being the hero of my own story that nobody else can see. I find my autistic experience reflected in Guy because Zero One is such a neoliberal piece of accidentally dystopian corporate fiction for the majority of the run. The conversation about the media is paramount to the media itself. If you feel represented by Billy from Power Rangers, that is wonderful, and I am very happy for you. I certainly don't hope to take that away from you. I'm really just using it for the Autism Speaks joke. Lord knows that we need more black autistic representation out in the world, but autism is a spectrum, and obviously that's not me. And that's okay, as long as we get more material to balance out the, mainstream perception in any given moment. Guy is my personal autistic experience, and I treasure that, especially given how rare a gem that is to mine in an ocean of neurotypical media. Thank you very much for watching. Another thing that Guy and I clearly share is a propensity for verbosity, so I am shocked to see you this far. I'm sure this was a slough, and I expect the comments section to be incredibly interesting if anybody actually makes it all the way through. But I appreciate your sticking by, and I hope that I have helped to offer a new perspective on this thing that I absolutely love to death. Oh, fuck, echolalia. Echolalia is when autistic people will verbally stim by repeating phrases that are significant to them. So, like, sen percento, all as the arc wills it, I'm gonna fucking kill you, Artohedon. That sort of thing that we see, Guy constantly repeating over the series. It's not just a catchphrase in this reading, because if he's autistic, then it's very likely that he is stimming when he's doing this, especially given how often he falls back onto it in pressured situations. Oh my god, it just keeps getting longer. If you would like a better companion piece, I would recommend I Heart Huckabees, which is ironically currently being hosted on Amazon Prime. It features a lot of the same philosophies at play, and I feel that the Jude Law character in particular is relevant to our discussion. I have to go shave because this video took 1,000 years to come out. We got a whole new Guy movie while I was filming this, so I'm gonna bounce. But if you would like to do something for Autism Month and you know better than to trust autism charities, then feel free to visit my Patreon or my Ko-fi, both linked below. Maybe leave a like and a sub while you're there. If you're autistic, feel free to leave a list of any characters that you think are autistic and you might like to see a video about in the future, because I think that there are plenty. I personally am a big fan of Tsukasa. For now, I've been Tim Shields, and when it comes to tokusatsu, I'm your guy. And now you know why.